Welcome to the Schlegel Design Remodel Podcast. I'm Amy Gerard, and today we're going to discuss how to decide if you should move or improve your existing home. Here to help us weigh in these two options is Kansas City real estate expert Brian Fleming. Brian isn't just an expert in the Kansas City real estate market, he's also a bit of a celebrity, having appeared on both Shark Tank and Wheel of Fortune. So Brian, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay,
I'm excited to do this for you guys.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. It's fun to get another perspective on all of this. Okay, so before I start asking questions on moving and improving, I have to know, what was it like being on Shark Tank?
You know, Shark Tank was just like you see it on TV. Like a lot of times TV doesn't do it justice, but Shark Tank was just as intimidating as you would think it is. You walk down that hallway, you see those celebrities just like that. One thing that people don't understand is that, I was actually in the Shark Tank for nearly an hour and they edited it down to about 10 minutes. So when you see people sweating on there, you're like, how is that person sweating after just a few minutes? You need to know that it's actually been quite a long time that they've been in there sitting under those lights getting grilled. So it's an intense experience, but it's definitely fun to have said that I went toe to toe with the sharks.
Yeah, that is intense. Wow, I had no idea. Full hour. No wonder everyone is sweaty.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone thinks it's just a cute little 8-minute segment, but it's not. They really beat you up for quite a while in there.
It makes sense. I mean, they're putting some money in investing, and they probably have a lot more questions than what they're showing.
For sure, they definitely do.
All right, so let's get into talking about moving or improving. Okay, when you speak with a homeowner and they share, they're kind of debating, they're on the line. Should we move or should we improve their existing home? What do you do to help kind of guide them in that decision?
Obviously as a realtor, I want to be the best fiduciary I can be for my clients, and whether it is renovating, which wouldn't include me, or moving, which would, I just definitely want to make sure that I put them in the right direction so that they, know that I had their best interests at heart. It's really kind of a case by case basis. So just as if you were going out to look at 10 homes, you're not going to like 8 of them. You're going to like maybe 1 or 2 and make an offer on that. So it's really case by case. And you really have to get into the details of each home to understand if you should be renovating or if it's time to cash out and move on and kind of maybe go to the next level up for a neighborhood.
Sure. So it's not a one answer fits all type of thing. It's
Definitely
individual.
Definitely not. There's a lot of factors that you want to take into account when you're contacted. And I assume Schlegel does the same thing as well, where you're kind of trying to guide people what's going to be best for their home and help them make decisions when they're not doing the stuff that we do daily.
Definitely. It's definitely a process of trying to ask those questions to figure out what's best for them, not just now, but longer term too, because they are making that a big investment into their home.
For sure. Definitely.
So speaking of investment finances, how do you help clients decide financially what makes the most sense to them?
Again, going back to what we just talked about, and there being a lot of different components to this. One of them is, what do you owe on your property? What are you going to put into your property? And what will the property, in my opinion, or an appraiser's opinion, be comped out at? Or what will it appraise for when that work is done? So, a lot of people want to know all that information, and Schlegel probably works with folks as well who just don't care. We want to make the house how we want to make it. We don't care about the cost, and we just want to make it the way we want it. And we're going to live here for 25 years. And we're really not all that concerned about the cost component of this. So that's kind of the mix. But for the most part, obviously, if somebody's going to be spending 10, 20, 50, 100, 200, $300,000 on a remodel, they're definitely going to want to make sure that they're safe putting their money in that spot, especially if it's financed. The bank's going to want to know that as well.
Sure. Yeah. I've actually recently gone through that, and yeah, you definitely, if you're involving the bank, the numbers have to work. Yeah. The future value of the home to current value of the home. Yeah.
Correct. And, if you're dealing with a local lender here in town, their appraiser is probably a little bit different than if you were buying the home with a conventional loan. So their appraisers can be, in my experience, a little bit harder than the conventional appraisers from, bigger companies.
Sure, they know the area really well, so maybe they're detailing it out even further. I don't know.
Definitely.
That would make sense. So speaking of that, you alluded to it a little bit, but the capped value in your neighborhood. So as you said, some people, and we have the privilege of working with those people, they don't care. Like they're in it for the long haul. They want what they want. They're not worried about that investment. But some people it matters. And so what is this capped value in a neighborhood?
Well, the cap value is basically the old rule that you don't want to be the nicest house on the block, or I guess you don't want to buy the nicest house on the block, but maybe you can create the nicest house on the block and then eventually sell it. But the capped rate's basically going to be what your comparable sales are in the last 180 days, even 90 days, if there's good comparable sales within, most specifically, your subdivision. And if there's nothing in that subdivision, within a quarter mile or even a half mile radius of your home. So that's what everyone's going to want to look at. And that's going to be the best determining factor of what your house is actually worth or could be worth after the improvements are made.
Do you feel like when you've provided that information and kind of done almost an assessment of those recent comps that has helped your clients come to that answer? Have you ever had clients that when you provide that, they're like, yes, we're selling now, or nope, we're going to remodel?
You guys probably see it on the other side. You guys probably see people who don't understand the true cost of maybe a renovation, and they get the bid and they're kind of said, okay, I guess we are going to sell. So you guys probably see it from that side, but I do as well, where they just say, I just don't want to deal with the headache of this. And I don't think it's maybe my people in their 30s and 40s are using the term forever home, where they're going to plan to raise their children and kids for the next 15 or 20 years. So if they don't really see that long-term forever home potential in it, then that changes the dynamic for sure. If somebody comes in and buys a home and says, this is the floor plan we love this location, we're going to go ahead and do whatever we want to make this a fantastic home. And maybe we have exceeded the neighborhood cap, as we just talked about, but we're, again, back to what we said earlier, we're not concerned about it. We're going to be here long enough that it's going to catch up with us, and we'll be just fine on the value whenever that day comes that we decide to sell.
Sure. I feel like with what you see on your side and what we see on our side, we have a love it or list it show in the making.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Okay. So a little bit along those same lines is when a client is getting ready to potentially sell their home, do you suggest they renovate it or make improvements to that home before they sell? Because again, that's adding more money expense and then turning around and buying another home. So kind of a dual expense.
Yeah. And that will come down to kind of the ROI, or the return on their investment. And if there's, bigger jobs that would involve a schlegel design and remodel, then, that's obviously a bigger commitment than maybe smaller jobs where, you could be improving a closet here and there, or painting, or, smaller improvements definitely will bring a return. And sometimes the bigger ones do as well. As you guys probably know in your line of work, kitchens and baths are what are selling homes. And if you're deficient there, even though the market is super, super hot right now for sellers, you're basically going to be kind of behind your competitor houses that are also on the market, is what I would say.
Sure. Yeah. Kitchen and baths. Unfortunately, they're also the two most expensive rooms to remodel.
Sure
So
are.
I think when you're talking to those clients, outweighing, okay, if you're going to put in a full new kitchen versus the spend that you'll actually get back out of it, if you're only going to get 50%, is that worth it? And I guess I always think about when you sell, it's more like superficial cosmetic items you can update. Like you said, paint, maybe a new countertop, new faucet.
Correct. Maybe a tile, maybe a closet system. But a lot of that stuff is superficial, coming down to decluttering and staging your home correctly, more of that than actual, renovations. But there does come a time when you're like, some of these houses need so much work and they have the pink shag carpet and stuff like this, that it's such a distraction that maybe you say, I've had clients where we say, let's demo the house so people can have a little bit more vision than, the house that smells like smoke and cats and all this stuff where you walk in and you're just saying, I can't deal with this. Well, let's get that out of their brain. Let's remove that obstacle so that they can see the potential of what this can be with their finishes, basically. So sometimes it's not necessarily improvements, but deprovements, if that's even a word.
Sure.
I think I just made up a word, Amy.
Man, we have made a show in Kansas City, and you're adding
Exactly.
to the dictionary. I mean, we're on a roll.
Exactly. Deprovements. The hashtag that. So
Okay, I'll go ahead and add that to the podcast.
okay, perfect.
Yeah,
Deprovements.
information. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really great concept, that de-improvement, because they're probably getting the same dollar amount without all that stuff in there as they would with it. It's just now the person can see, they visualize how large that space is with those walls down.
Well, I mean, do you find in your guys' world that I definitely find in the real estate world that people see things as they are, and 90% of people have a hard time seeing things the way they could be. And so it's probably the same in your world until people get into the showroom and start picking out
Yeah.
selections where they can actually visualize it. But, you know, walls here and there and kitchen counters and paint and carpet, like you got to be able to look past those things. And as a realtor, it's somewhat easy because you're so used to it. But as people who are buying a home once every 5 or 8 years, you don't do it all that often. So you just see grandma's house and the cats and the smoke and all that stuff. You got to look past it and say, let's go ahead and clean this one up. We like the floor plan and we know we can make it ours.
I like it. I like it. Okay, so back to whether we move or improve, what kind of a value do people put on to kind of that intrinsic, their attachment to their existing home? Like, what areas do you look at?
It's different for sellers and buyers. Obviously, sellers, they have a hard time emotionally if they've been in that house or they've raised their kids in that home, saying goodbye to it, or they have great neighbors. If you were in a home for 2 or 3 years, your emotional attachment probably isn't as much as somebody who spent 20 years at the back of a cul-de-sac with the same 5 neighbors. So if they've gotten to me and they're ready to sell, obviously they've gone through the emotional roller coaster. Now, on the opposite side of things, the buyers, when you see a seller's disclosure and it says somebody's been there for 20 years, then I recommend writing a letter and letting them know, hey, we can tell how well you have loved this home. I see the photos of your family on the wall. We hope to raise a family in this home too. Things like this, let them know that the baton is being passed to somebody who's going to be a good steward of the home that's not going to be theirs anymore in ownership, but for certain it is still in their heart. So those are the kind of things that you have to be aware of as an agent. And that's kind of how it is on both sides of it. You have to recognize as a buyer that this seller is probably emotional and perhaps sad based on the fact that we know that they've been there for this long. And you have to massage that a little bit. It certainly helps.
Sure. I was explaining to you, I think before we started, that Donna Kursop has just recently finished with a client that their home is quite small, Cape Cod home, and they raised 5 children in it. And once all the kids were gone, decided to remodel. And Donna even said, I don't know that this is a good use of your money. Like, you could go buy a home for probably cheaper. And they said, we don't care. This is our family home. It is in a location we want, and we're moving forward. And they did, and it's spectacular. But yeah, to your point is, had they been there 2 years, they probably wouldn't have done that. But they had so much value in their having raised 5 children that it was that important to them.
You're exactly right. You can't put a value on those kind of priceless memories that people have for their homes.
Yep. Okay. And you already said something about this, but deciding whether it's a good time to sell. Talk to us a little bit. What does the real estate market look like today?
Well, if you want to sell, call me now. No, I'm just kidding. If you have nothing, if you are downsizing, for example, and you don't need to go out and buy anything right now, there's probably never been a better time in my lifetime to sell your home, which is crazy to say. On the buyer side, we just find ourselves being a little more patient. Maybe you're used to every time you write a contract, almost every time, 18 months ago or 2 years ago, getting that home, or at least getting negotiation happening with the sellers. Now it's a little bit more competitive and you have to get a little bit more creative when you're presenting offers to make yourself stand out from what is pretty much a crowded pack right now. But it is definitely tilted towards the sellers. There's not enough inventory on the market to meet the demand of how many buyers are out here right now.
Sure. And I think that's why remodeling is booming as people see low inventory. Let's remodel. Let's make what our home is today, make it work for us for the next 5, 10 years. So yeah.
And I think you guys have probably learned over the last year that everybody kind of got sick of being with everybody. So everybody was looking for more space in their home or figuring out deficiencies in their home that
Yep.
they wanted to improve. So yeah, realtors and Schlegel Design and Remodel and other contractors and builders, as we all know, are just as busy as they can be.
Right. So that's an important thing today when you're thinking about improving versus moving is improving you're on a list and moving it's going to take a little bit longer to probably find the perfect home for you. So it's that weighing those kind of new dilemmas that exist today.
You're right. But if you're in a position where you can buy a home without having to sell your own home, then, that obviously is a better position to be in, because I have a lot of clients who would like to move, but they're not in that position. So they are saying, where would I go once I sell? I don't know how long I'll be sitting out here in a rental or living with mom and dad while I look. So again, sometimes that does kick it back to Schlegels and other people like that who say, well, let's just improve where we are and make this one better. And we'll stay here a couple more years and let this settle down.
How do you evaluate what someone's home might be worth in deciding if it's a good time for them to sell? What I think you already kind of talked about this, you pulling comps and what are you all looking at?
Right. And again, it's really just kind of case by case situation. So, if it's the young couple that just had their second child and they're in a 3-bedroom house, they're in that little Cape Cod that you're talking about, where it was impressive that family was able to raise 5 children there. But a lot of people start looking for more space. It comes down to what's the right thing for your family. Some people are in a more rushed situation to sell where they say, hey, we need to get out of this house. We have no closet space. We have nowhere for the kids to go, that kind of deal. Where there's other people who are saying, this isn't our ideal house, but we can hold on for a year or two and then keep looking as the market maybe cools down a little bit on the seller's side. But determining that worth is really going to come down to comparable sales. And even right now, I'm going to take comparable sales and maybe tack on some more, which is pretty crazy the way things have been going. So comparable sales in a normal market are your best indicator of what your home's value is. But right now, it's really the market's telling us what these homes are worth more so than any other time that I've been in the business.
And I don't think it's just Kansas City. I feel like we're seeing a lot of this nationwide, unless you're in the really big cities where some people have been leaving. But it's interesting that the homes are getting multiple offers on day one or day two, and you kind of get to pick. To your point of writing that letter, that might be your in.
Well, yeah, I mean, it all helps, but people are even taking more drastic steps of, waiving appraisals and inspections. And so it's really, really hyper competitive. But I've still got people buying houses and getting things under contract. So it's really just kind of timing and patience and waiting for your moment to jump up there and kind of be ready when the time comes.
Sure. Should we talk about some of the pros and cons of renovating versus moving? So I know for us, some of the pros to renovating are you get to stay in your own home. And you get exactly what you want when you renovate. When you move to a different home, you might not. But when it's your own home, you get to make it exactly what you want to fit your lifestyle.
Well, you're missing the best of both worlds. You move and renovate. Then it serves both.
That's right.
The pros to renovate, like you get to put your own stamp on it. It's somewhat frustrating when people go and buy a home and it has maybe granite or something that's a little bit dated, but still is hanging in there looking okay. You almost wish they had Formica countertops, so you were forced to get rid of it and do it over. So you're like, you kind of do this delicate dance of should we or can we wait, and this whole deal on renovate. So again, if you do it at your own home, you've lived in it, you understand what's annoying about your home because you've been there, as opposed to a new home that you maybe need to stay in for 6 months or a year and then renovate so you can understand oh, this closet's not going to work. We need to bust that out, or we need to get rid of that wall. This shower's leaking. We need some help. So that's just my opinion, but definitely that's the biggest thing. And you get to stay in your own location, as you said as well. You get to stay where you probably are more comfortable.
Unless you don't like your neighbors. And then all of a sudden, that's a pro to moving.
That's correct. The people around me never stay more than 6 months. I don't know if it's me or somebody else, but people move.
Didn't you mention Charlie's your neighbor?
Yes, Charlie is my neighbor.
For those of you who don't know, we're referring to Charlie Schlegel, one of the co-owners of Schlegel Design Remodel. We always have to give him a hard time.
And he has nobody. The houses are all vacant around him.
So maybe it's not
yeah,
you.
exactly.
Okay, how about some of those cons for renovations? Why might someone choose not to?
As much as I hate to say it, probably cost prohibitive. It's not cheap, depending on how big of a job you're doing. You have to live through the construction, and you're still left with the same. If you're not bumping out the home, you could maybe be left with the same amount of square footage that you have. It's much nicer at that point and updated, but if your square footage needs grow through the years, then you're still could be out looking for a home if this house doesn't fit what you need from size perspective.
Sure, that makes perfect sense. All right, so those pros to moving. I think the first one you just covered, you get that additional space if you were short on space.
Right. Or get rid of or shed space. If you're downsizing, the kids are gone, you can go either way on that. And basically you can go ahead and find a home that maybe has everything that you want from a floor plan perspective. That's kind of the fun thing. Everybody, even people who have just recently moved, get wandering eyes. And it's like, why are you cheating on me? That's what the house is saying, because I take care of you. I keep you warm. I keep the rain off your head. And here you are out looking around on realtor.com cheating on me. So it's like everybody gets wandering eyes for their homes. But if you do get those wandering eyes, then it's time to go and figure out a new spot for you to be.
That's right. I love the wandering eyes.
Yeah.
I also think one pro, and I shouldn't say this because I'm in it, but you don't have to live through construction. That can be painful, but with Schlegel, we make it a lot easier. But I do know that is one reason some people choose to move. They don't want to deal with it.
Well, and not to give Schlegel a shameless plug, but working with a good contractor is so key, because more than anything, having good subs who you can make sure that you're maintaining your timeline is so key to your client's happiness, I'm sure. And it's the same thing with builders and everybody else. It's like, don't overpromise and underdeliver. Do the opposite. That should be everybody's goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think knowing they're going to be done with your kitchen and they are done with your kitchen on a specific time makes it more bearable than the another month.
Yep. If you actually believe them when they tell you that date. If you have a contractor that has the reputation for delivering, then it definitely makes it, you say we can make it to this point, but beyond that, that's where the wires start fraying just a little bit, I'm sure.
Yeah. All right. Finally, cons to moving. What are some of those?
Where am I going to go in this market is one of the cons to moving. If you don't have somewhere else ready to go, moving can be stressful. People, especially who have been in their homes for many years, accumulate a lot of stuff. And it literally is, you ask people, it's like one of the worst things in people's lives is actually getting the will up to pack it all up and move out. But you got to look at the positives on that side of things too. It's a nice time to purge and kind of get rid of the stuff that is weighing you down. Another reason that moving con is that you might not find exactly what you want, and you might not have it at your current home, and you still might not have everything that you want at your new home. So again, sometimes when you're trying to help buyers is compromise. You got to give up a little bit to get maybe something else that you would rather have. A huge kitchen and hearth room, but the master closet isn't quite as big. It's a little bit of give and take. It kind of always is, unless you're building a completely custom home, which the majority of us are not.
Right. The dream of everything you want, but yes, that's not always a reality.
Exactly. But, part of that is it doesn't need to be perfect. Part of that is we have to learn to live with kind of what we're dealt. And I think that improving your home through the years is a fun way to go. And definitely it's great to see it come along. And then if you do end up selling it after you've made improvements, those people really take a lot of pride in the fact that they've made this home so great and they were rewarded when it came time to sell it, as they should be, because they've spent the time and the treasure getting it to where it needs to be.
It's a great point. Well, that was the items I wanted to talk about. I definitely don't think there is a silver bullet to answering move or improve. I think it's analyzing everyone's situation and you have to do what's right for you. But I think talking through some of those things and especially Brian, your expertise you're bringing to the market, I think help.
Well, I appreciate that, Amy. And yeah, it's definitely, like you said, it's case by case. And we just have to, get into the weeds of each deal here and figure it out and basically decide, are you ready to renovate? Are you ready to move? And that's going to be the name of our new TV show. Right?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Brian.
Amy, thanks for having me.